very much. Good afternoon. I was wondering about that question of travel as I try to work my way across London. We have to do something about congestion, don't we? So good afternoon, everyone. It's my absolute pleasure to be speaking with you today and share my thoughts and experiences in life. The theme of innovation today comes at arguably one of the most innovative times in history. And whether it's through AI disrupting a number of sectors, quantum computing redefining possibilities, or in my own industry, where we're witnessing a seismic shift moving from the internal combustion engine towards an electrical future. Contentiously, I say that. Before I begin, I should start by taking you on a quick whistle-stop tour of my experience in the auto industry. And I assure you that I can only talk with any gravitas around the auto industry. It makes me very boring at dinner parties. The auto industry has provided me with countless experiences that have shaped my contemporary thoughts on the industry that I suppose that we all know and love. So, as introduced, I'm Andy Palmer. I have 45 years, I know I don't look it, but 45 years of experience in the auto industry, including serving as Chief Operations Officer at Nissan, where I was happily credited with pioneering the world's first mass-market electric vehicle, the Nissan Leaf. More on that later. And as Chief Executive at Aston Martin, where I led the company to its first profits ever, and still ever. Thank you. It was only a moment in time. But I did manage to introduce Aston's first SUV and its first mid-engined hypercar. More importantly, perhaps, set it on its way of the electrification journey. Today I serve on various businesses operating in the net zero space, including Innobat Auto, which makes battery cells, Hilo, it's an electric scooter business, PodPoint, where I'm chairman, the largest EV charging network in the UK, Ionetic, which produces battery packs, Brill Power, a battery controlling expertise, and indeed many more. Today I'm going to talk to you about my journey of developing the world's first electric vehicle, as well as exploring how far the auto industry has to go to become mature and how that market will develop. When I began planning for this talk, I saw an old saying from Andy Warhol that states, they always say time changes things, but actually you have to change them yourselves. It's a phrase that lingered with me for a few days after hearing it, not least because it's a perfect reflection of the world we see today. In fact, it could very much be argued that right now is the most exciting period in history since the Industrial Revolution. But the change is being driven by us and by choice. Change and innovation doesn't happen by accident, and we must protect our collective desire to seek betterment and ultimately to innovate. The move that we as a global community are making towards carbon neutrality is one of such magnitude that we are, for the first time in many decades, seeing new players into our industry and new expectations being set by consumers in every single economic sector. Whilst from the outside it may look like some of that change is being driven by external factors such as governments, I'd argue that actually a lot of that change, as Andy Warhol suggests, is being driven from within by businesses and, more importantly, by the consumer. This became more and more obvious to me when I was at Nissan and we launched that world's first mass market electric vehicle. We truly did some great things at Nissan. In particular, I'm most proud of forging a new niche in the industry with that first electric car, the Nissan Leaf. Development for the Leaf started unbelievably 15 years ago and was established as a response to Toyota's successful hybrid, the Prius. But instead of going toe-to-toe with Toyota and creating a hybrid of our own, we took the bold move of developing a car that was fully electric. Why carry two powertrains around with you when you can carry only one? The response from the rest of the industry verged on the edge of ridicule. I distinctly remember one executive from a competitor telling me that we were better off throwing the $4 billion that it had taken us to develop Leaf, we'd be better off throwing it into the Pacific. Needless to say, that company is now scrambling to deliver its own EV offerings at a moment of, as the movement of travel is towards that net zero future. When I began developing the Leaf, it was the first generation of advanced batteries used in a vehicle. Back then, we used something called LMO, lithium manganese oxide. Today, the batteries found in Leaf and indeed in most cars are NMC, or nickel manganese cobalt. Difficult, isn't it, to pronounce these chemicals? It was much easier in a world of mechanical engineering. But basically, the NMC battery is much more efficient and lasts longer, as well as charges faster. It is possible, and some manufacturers use something called lithium iron phosphate, which is a cheaper battery and basically much safer to use, but has, as a result, lower energy density. Innovation, however, doesn't occur in isolation. It's a product of collaboration, product of investment, but above all, it's a product of vision. The development of the Leaf was not just a technical challenge, it required a cultural shift within Nissan to make it happen. We had to think beyond traditional automotive design, consider every aspect from the supply chain sustainability to end-of-life vehicle recycling. This holistic approach to innovation is crucial, and I believe that the future leaders in the room today must prepare to think similarly across disciplines and across industries to drive forward the next generation of sustainable whatever you're working in. With that being said, the cost of batteries nowadays is reducing significantly at the same time as efficiency is improving. For governments looking towards shifting from fossil fuels to electric power, this can't come soon enough. For many governments around the world, the approach seems to be to move away from subsidies and towards legislation to encourage an electric revolution. A mistake in my opinion, by the way. At least 9 countries, including the UK, France, Mexico and Spain, have pledged to phase out the internal combustion engine vehicles by around 2035. This is all well and good as long as those governments know where they want to get to. Let me give you an example. Politicians around the world need to ask themselves some fundamental questions. For example, are we trying to reduce carbon dioxide emissions, or are we chasing cleaner air? If it's the former that we're looking to achieve, then we should be focusing a little bit more energy on things like hot hydrogen and fuel cells and synthetic fuels. While synthetic fuels burn carbon, CO2 is actually captured in the manufacturing process, thereby resulting in a synthetic fuel becoming net zero. You take the carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, reducing the carbon dioxide, burn it and put it back in, but you're net zero. If it's clean air that we're chasing, then electric vehicles are an obvious solution as the tailpipe emissions get eradicated once and for all. However, we have to be conscious of some legitimate concerns around how materials for batteries are mined and manufactured. However, it might also be the case that those in power both want to capture CO2 as well as tackle cleaner air. If this is the case, then what we must do is pay the premium for that, given that the only viable options today in this regard is probably a fuel cell from a clean hydrogen source, and clean hydrogen sources are very, very scarce, about 1% of the hydrogen produced. The phasing out of the internal combustion engine is going to have a big and significant impact on the auto industry as we know it. What our political masters must do now is encourage competitiveness. So much so that engineers will battle it out in the development of new technologies that enable us to get there. If the petrol and diesel powered combustion engines are a thing of the past, then governments must not prescribe what they believe to be the replacement technology, because it'll just end in tears, as it did with diesel engines. Politicians should define the problem and let the engineers and scientists come up with a solution. You may have gathered from my speech so far that yes, I'm an idealist, but I'm also a realist. And that's why I urge caution when it comes to viewing electric cars, for which I'm well known, as the only option for our net zero future, because electric cars in their entirety might not be the best way of getting to where we want to get to. In my realist view, we must address the challenges of the present. We're in an era of unprecedented change where supply chain issues, geopolitical tensions, and economic uncertainties are the new norm. These challenges require not just innovative thinking, but also resilience and adaptability. The automotive industry must be agile enough to navigate short-term crises while keeping an eye on long-term goals. And this agility is something that I've learned to prioritize in every strategy that I've adopted. For example, hydrogen could well outperform electric batteries when it comes to efficiency as regards to heavy goods vehicles and long-haul buses. Synthetic fuels, on the other hand, might keep on quelling car enthusiasts' pleasure just a little longer by providing the noise and excitement that makes sports cars the excitable beasts that they truly are. There is no doubt that contemporary scientists are working on improving the cleanliness of synthetic fuels at this point in time. True, we're not there yet, but we all know how science works. In 5 years' time, we will achieve what we thought was impossible 10 years ago. What I'm trying to say is that we shouldn't put all of our eggs in one basket. If anything, we should diversify our strategy as much as possible. As an industry, we should have a plan A, a plan B, and a plan C. And it's only by doing that that we can have a plan that is truly resilient to changing circumstances. I note in recent times that the EU has agreed to adopt synthetic fuel as a legitimate net zero technology. The UK is still yet not followed that direction. The decisions that we take over the coming years will define the next era of human advancement. Getting the economies of batteries and other net zero fuels right is not something that we can do, it's something that we must do. However, doing is far from certain to happen seamlessly, given the global challenges of the modern world. It's also important to recognise the role of policy in shaping the future of transport. Excuse me. Good policy acts as a catalyst for innovation, creating an environment where new ideas can thrive. In the quest for carbon neutrality, we need policies that not only promote research and development, but also address market failures and remove barriers to the adoption of new technologies. By working together with policymakers, industry leaders can help to create a legislative framework that balances environmental imperatives with economic growth. Today, I truly believe that we find ourselves in the fourth iteration of the Industrial Revolution, a revolution that started through steam power. We would do well to keep in mind that the fifth iteration might very well be powered by our ability to identify and develop net zero modes of transport. Getting there, however, is not a natural process. Just as we had to push our boundaries in the past, so too we will have to push our boundaries in the present and future. Changing the world takes sweat and hard work. The revolution is already underway, let's keep it going. Let's not forget that society and economic shifts that accompany technological revolutions. The transition to net zero transport will not only alter how we travel, but will also have profound implications on urban planning, job creation, and global trade patterns. As we reduce our dependency on fossil fuel, we'll see a corresponding rise in new industries and new professions. It's essential that we prepare the workforce for this shift, ensuring that today's education and training programs are in lockstep with tomorrow's economic realities. It's been a real pleasure to speak to you today. If there's one thing that I would kind of like you to remember from this speech, it's the quote from the very beginning. Let me remind you the Andy Warhol's quote that they always say time changes things, but you actually have to change them yourself. Whatever the circumstances in which we operate, humankind has a rich history of changing and adapting itself, moulding around the demands of government and the expectations of consumers, but always on its own terms. And that's why right now, in such a vibrant and exciting time, why it's such an exciting time to be engaged in sustainability and in transportation. Unlike other changes that we've had to contend with in the past, the march towards carbon neutrality is stopping for no one. In other words, don't think more than you might need to about something. Don't speak too much about it. Just get on with it. We don't have very much time. So, how far do we have to go until EVs reach peak maturity? The truth is, quite a long way yet. But it isn't because of lack of innovation. Policy needs to keep up with the innovation that we need to see in the auto industry. And when that happens, EV, hydrogen, and other clean technologies will become widespread within the next decade. But we've got to make this happen first. Thank you.